Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for coming together to share in this great body of wisdom we call Torah, which we receive and contribute to and transmit all simultaneously. We are this week in Parshat Ki Tisa, which is in the book of Exodus, chapter 30, beginning with verse 11. If you'd like to go ahead and unmute at this time together, we can recite a blessing, giving thanks for the opportunity of this moment. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher mitzvotav v'tzivanu so b'divrei Torah. Thank you, God, for the opportunity of this moment to immerse ourselves in words, deeds, and relationships of Torah. We will read through the English translation of our weekly portion. I'll share with you a focused study about it, and then we will open it up for our collaborative conversation about it. I'll share with you the opening verses, and then I'll offer others an opportunity to read as well. Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, "When you take a census of the Israelite people according to their enrollment, each shall pay Adonai a ransom for himself on being enrolled, that no plague may come upon them through their being enrolled. This is what everyone who is entered in the record shall pay: a half shekel by the sanctuary weight, 20 gerahs to the shekel, a half shekel as an offering to Adonai. Everyone who is entered in the records from the age of 20 years up shall give Adonai's offering. The rich shall not pay more, and the poor shall not pay less than half a shekel when giving God's offering as expiation for your persons. You shall take the expiation money from the Israelites and assign it to the service of the tent of meeting. It shall serve the Israelites as a reminder before Adonai as expiation for your persons." And then, Sherry, would you like to read a little bit starting at verse 17?
Thank you. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Make a laver of copper and a stand of copper for it, for washing, and place it between the tent of meeting and the altar. Put water in it, and let Aaron and his sons wash their hands and feet in the water drawn from it. When they enter the tent of meeting, they shall wash with water, that they may not die, or when they approach the altar to serve, to turn into smoke an offering by fire to the Lord. They shall wash their hands and feet, and they may not die. It shall be a law for all time for them, for him and his offspring throughout the ages."
Thank you. Steve, would you like to read there verse 22?
The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Next take choice spices, 500 weight, and solidified myrrh, half as much, 250, of fragrant cinnamon, 250 of aromatic cane, 500 by the sanctuary weight of cassia, and a hin of olive oil. Make of this a sacred anointing oil, a compound of ingredients expertly blended to serve as sacred anointing oil. With it anoint the tent of meeting, the ark of the pact, the table and all its utensils, the lampstand and all its fittings, the altar of incense, the altar burnt offering and all its utensils, and the laver and its stand. Thus you shall consecrate them so that they may be most holy. Whatever touches them shall be consecrated. You shall also anoint Aaron and his sons, consecrating them to serve me as priests."
Thank you. Richard, do you want to continue there at chapter 30, verse 31?
Yes, sure. Thank you. "And speak to the Israelites people as follows. This shall be an anointing oil, sacred to me throughout the ages. It must not be rubbed on any person's body, and you must not make anything like it in the same proportions. It is sacred, to be held sacred by you. Whoever compounds its like or puts any of it on a layman shall be cut off from his kin. And the Lord said to Moses, take the herbs Sakti, Onycha, and Galbanum, these herbs together with pure frankincense. Let there be an equal part of each. Make them into incense, a compound expertly blended, refined, pure, sacred. Beat some of it into powder and put some before the pact in the tent of meeting, where I will meet you. It shall be most holy to you. But when you make this incense, you must not make any in the same proportions for yourselves. It shall be held by you sacred to the Lord. Whoever makes any like it, to smell of it, shall be cut off from its kin.
Thank you. Anna, would you like to read at the very start of chapter 31?
Sure. Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh spoke to Moses. See, I have singled out by name Bezalel, the son of Uri, son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah. I have endowed him with a divine spirit of skill, ability, and knowledge in every kind of craft, to make designs for work in gold, silver, and copper, to cut stones for setting, and to carve wood, to work in every kind of craft. Moreover, I have assigned to him Aholiab, son of Ahisamach, of the tribe of Dan, and I have also granted skill to all who are skillful, that they may make everything that I have commanded you, the tent of meeting, the ark for the pact, and the cover upon it, and all the furnishings of the tent, the table and its utensils, the pure lampstand, and all its fittings, and the altar of incense, the altar of burnt offering, and all its utensils, and the laver and its stand, the service vestments, the sacred vestments of Aaron the priest, and the vestments of his sons for their service as priests, as well as the anointing oil and the aromatic incense for the sanctuary. Just as I have commanded you, they shall do.
Thank you. June, would you like to read a little starting at verse 12 of chapter 31?
Thank you, Rabbi. And the Lord said to Moses, speak to the Israelite people and say, nevertheless, you must keep my Sabbaths, for this is a sign between me and you throughout the ages, that you may know that I, the Lord, have consecrated you. You shall keep the Sabbath, for it is holy for you. He who profanes it shall be put to death. Whoever does work on it, that person shall be cut off from among his kin. 6 days may work be done, but on the seventh day there shall be a Sabbath of complete rest, holy to the Lord. Whoever does work on the Sabbath day shall be put to death. The Israelite people shall keep the Sabbath, observing the Sabbath throughout the ages as a covenant for all time. It shall be a sign for all time between me and the people of Israel. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, and on the seventh day he ceased from work and was refreshed. When he finished speaking with him on Mount Sinai, he gave Moses the 2 tablets of the pact, stone tablets inscribed with the finger of God.
Thank you, June. David, would you like to read at the start of chapter 32?
Yeah, I guess. When the people saw that Moses was so long in coming down from the mountain, the people gathered against Aaron and said to him, come, make us a god who shall go before us. For that fellow Moses, the man who brought us from the land of Egypt, we do not know what has happened to him. Aaron said to them, you men, take off the gold rings that are on the ears of your wives, your sons, and your daughters, and bring them to me. And all the people took off the gold rings that were in their ears and brought them to Aaron. Then he took from them and cast in a mold and made it into a molten calf. And they explained, this is your God, O Israel, who brought you out of the land of Egypt. When Aaron saw this, he built an altar before it, and Aaron announced, Tomorrow shall be a festival of Adonai. Early next day, the people offered up burnt offerings and brought sacrifices of well-being. They sat down to eat and drink, and they rose to dance.
Thank you so much. Let me invite David and Susan. Would you like to continue there at verse 7?
Thank you. Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh spoke to Moses. Hurry down, for your people, whom you brought out of the land of Egypt, have acted basely. They have been quick to turn aside from the way that I enjoined upon them. They have made themselves a molten calf and bowed low to it and sacrificed to it, saying, "This is your God, O Israel, who brought you out of the land of Egypt." Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh further said to Moses, I see that this is a stiff-necked people. Now let me be, that my anger may blaze forth against them, and that I may destroy them and make of you a great nation.
And Moses conciliated in front of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, his God. And Moses said, why, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, should your anger flare at your people whom you brought out from the land of Egypt with a big power and a strong hand? Why should Egypt saying, he brought them out for bad, to kill them in the mountains, and to finish them from on the face of the earth? Turn back from your flaring anger and relent about the bad to your people. Remember Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, your servants, that you swore to them by yourself, and you spoke to them, saying, I'll multiply your seed like the stars of the skies, and I'll give to your seed all this land that I've said, and they'll possess it forever. And Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh relented about the bad that he had spoken to do to his people.
Thank you so much. Jim, would you like to continue there at verse 15?
Yes. Thank you, Rabbi. Thereupon Moses turned and went down from the mountain, bearing the 2 tablets of the pact, tablets inscribed on both their surfaces. They were inscribed on the one side and on the other. The tablets were God's work, and the writing was God's writing, incised upon the tablets. When Joshua heard the sound of the people in the boisterousness, he said to Moses, there is a cry of war in the camp. But he answered, it is not the sound of the tune of triumph, or the sound of the tune of defeat. It is the sound of song that I hear. As soon as Moses came near the camp and saw the calf and the dancing, he became enraged, and he hurled the tablets from his hands and shattered them at the foot of the mountain. He took the calf that they'd made and burned it. He ground it to powder and strewed it upon the water, and so made the Israelites drink it.
Thank you, Jim. And Mark Thompson, would you like to continue there at verse 21?
Yes, thank you, Rabbi. Moses said to Aaron, what did this people do to you that you have brought such great sin upon them? Aaron said, let not my Lord be enraged. You know that this people is bent on evil. They said to me, make us a god to lead us for that man Moses, who brought us from the land of Egypt. We do not know what has happened to him. So I said to them, whoever has gold, take it off. They gave it to me, and I hurled it into the fire, and out came this calf. Moses saw that the people were out of control, since Aaron had let them get out of control, so that they were a menace to any who might oppose them. Moses stood up in the gate of the camp and said, whoever is for the Lord, come here. And all the Levites rallied to him. He said to them, thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, each of you put sword on thigh, go back and forth from gate to gate throughout the camp, and slay brother, neighbor, and kin. The Levites did as Moses had bidden, And some 3,000 of the people fell that day. And Moses said, dedicate yourselves to the Lord this day, for each of you has been against son and brother, that he may bestow a blessing upon you today.
Thank you. And Kath, would you like to continue there at verse 30?
Yes, thank you, Rabbi. The next day, Moses said to the people, you have been guilty of a great sin, yet I will now go up to Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh. Perhaps I may win forgiveness for your sin. Moses went back to Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh and said, alas, this people is guilty of a great sin in making for themselves a god of gold. Now, if you will forgive their sin, well and good. But if not, erase me from the record which you have written. But Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh said to Moses, only one who has sinned against me will I erase from my record. Go now, lead the people where I told you. See, my messenger shall go before you. But when I make an accounting, I will bring them to account for their sins. Then Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh sent a plague upon the people for what they did with the calf that Aaron made.
Thank you, Kath. Catherine, would you like to continue there at the very start of chapter 33?
Yes, thank you, Rabbi. Then the Lord said to Moses, set out from here, you and the people that you have brought up from the land of Egypt, to the land of which I swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, saying, to your offspring will I give it. I will send an angel before you, and I will drive out the Canaanites, the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, a land flowing with milk and honey. But I will not go in your midst, since you are a stiff-necked people, lest I destroy you on the way. When the people heard this harsh word, they went into mourning, and none put on his finery. Adonai said to Moses, say to the Israelite people, you are a stiff-necked people. If I were for one moment, I would destroy you. Now then, leave off your finery, and I will consider what to do to you. So the Israelites remained stripped of the finery from Mount Horeb on.
Thank you, Catherine. Let me invite Wendy. Would you like to read this evening? We're now at verse 7 of chapter 33.
Yes, thank you. Now Moses would take the tent and pitch it outside on the camp at some distance from the camp. It was called the tent of meeting, and whoever sought the Lord would go out to the tent of meeting that was outside the camp. Whenever Moses went out to the tent, all the people would rise and stand, each at the entrance of his tent, and gaze after Moses until he had entered the tent. And when Moses entered the tent, the pillar of cloud would descend and stand at the entrance of the tent while he spoke with Moses. When all the people saw the pillar of cloud poised at the entrance of the tent, all the people would rise and bow low, each at the entrance of his tent. The Lord would speak to Moses face to face, as one man speaks to another. And he would then return to the camp. But his attendant Joshua, son of Nun, a youth, would not stir out of the tent.
Thank you, Wendy. Norman, would you like to read? We're at verse 12 of chapter 33.
Moses said to Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, see, you say to me, lead this people forward, but you have not made known to me whom you will send with me. Further, you have said, I have singled you out by name, and you have indeed gained my favor. Now, if I have truly gained your favor, pray let me know your ways, that I may know you and continue in your favor. Consider too that this nation is your people. And God said, I will go and lead and will lighten your burden. And he replied, unless you go and lead, do not make us leave this place. For how shall it be known that your people have gained your favor unless you go with us, so that we may be distinguished, your people and I, from every people on the face of the earth?
Thank you, Norman.
And Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh said,
let me invite Jay. Thank you, Norman. Let me invite Jay, if I could invite you to read starting at verse 17.
Thank you, Rabbi. And Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh said to Moses, I will also do this thing that you have asked, for you have truly gained my favor, and I have singled you out by name. He said, Oh, let me behold your presence. And he answered, I will make all my goodness pass before you, and I will proclaim before you the name Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh and the grace that I grant and the compassion that I show. But, he said, you cannot see my face, for man may not see me and live. And Adonai said, See, there is a place near me. Station yourself on the rock, and as my presence passes by, I will put you in a cleft of the rock and shield you with my hand until I have passed by. Then I will take my hand away, and you will see my back, but my face must not be seen.
Thank you. We're now in chapter 34. God said to Moses, Carve 2 tablets of stone like the first, and I will inscribe upon the tablets the words that are on the first tablets which you shattered. Be ready by morning, and in the morning come up to Mount Sinai and present yourself there to me on the top of the mountain. No one else shall come up with you, and no one else shall be seen anywhere on the mountain. Neither shall the flocks and the herds graze at the foot of this mountain. So Moses carved 2 tablets of stone like the first, and early in the morning he went up on Mount Sinai as God had commanded him, taking the 2 stone tablets with him. Adonai came down in a cloud. God stood with him there and proclaimed the name Adonai. God passed before him and pronounced, Adonai, Adonai, a God compassionate and gracious, slow to anger, abounding in kindness and faithfulness, extending kindness to the 1000th generation, forgiving iniquity, transgression, and sin. Yet God does not remit all punishment, but visits the iniquity of parents upon children and children's children upon the 3rd and 4th generations. Richard, would you like to continue there at verse 8 of chapter 34?
Yes, Rabbi, thanks. Moses hastened to bow low to the ground in homage and said, If I have gained your favor, O Lord, pray let the Lord go in our midst, even though it is a stiff-necked people. Your favor, O Lord, pray let us go in your midst, even though this is a stiff-necked people. Pardon our iniquity and our sin, and take us for your own. He said, I hereby make a covenant. Before all your people, I will work such wonders as have not been wrought on all the earth or in any nation, and all the people who are with you shall see how awesome are the Lord's deeds, which I will perform for you. Mark well what I command you this day. I will drive out before you the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. Beware of making a covenant with the inhabitants of the land against which you are advancing, lest they be a snare in your midst. No, you must tear down their altars, smash their pillars, and cut down their sacred posts. For you must not worship any other God, because the Lord, whose name is impassioned, is an impassioned God. You must not make a covenant with the inhabitants of the land, for they will lust after their gods and sacrifice to their gods, and invite you, and you will eat of their sacrifices. And when you take wives from among their daughters, for your sons, their daughters, will lust after their gods, and will cause your sons to lust after them.
Thank you. Anna, would you like to read a little bit more, starting at verse 17?
You shall not make molten gods for yourselves. You shall observe the feast of unleavened bread, eating unleavened bread for 7 days, as I have commanded you, at the set time of the month of Aviv. For in the month of Aviv you went forth from Egypt. Every first issue of the womb is mine. From all your livestock that drop a male as firstling, whether cattle or sheep, but the firstling of an ass you shall redeem with a sheep. If you do not redeem it, you must break its neck. And you must redeem every male firstborn among your children. None shall appear before me empty-handed. 6 days you shall work, but on the 7th day You shall cease from labor. You shall cease from labor even at plowing time and harvest time.
Thank you, Anna. Sherry, would you like to continue there, verse 22?
Thank you, Rabbi. You shall observe the Feast of Weeks, of the first fruits of the wheat harvest, and the Feast of Ingathering at the turn of the year. 3 times a year, all your males shall appear before the sovereign Lord, the God of Israel. I will drive out nations from your path and enlarge your territory. No one will covet your land when you go up to appear before the Lord your God 3 times a year. You shall not offer the blood of my sacrifice with anything leavened, and the sacrifice of the feast of Passover shall not be left lying until morning. The choice first fruits of your soil you shall bring to the house of the Lord your God. You shall not boil a kid in its mother's milk.
Thank you, Sherry. Steve, would you like to read a little bit more? We're at verse 27.
And the Lord said to Moses, write down these commandments, for in accordance with these commandments, I make a covenant with you and with Israel. And he was there with the Lord 40 days and 40 nights. He ate no bread, he drank no water. And he wrote down on the tablets the terms of the covenant, the 10 commandments.
Thanks, Steve. Let me invite June. Would you like to continue there at verse 29?
Thank you, Rabbi. So Moses came down from Mount Sinai, and as Moses came down from the mountain, bearing the 2 tablets of the pact, Moses was not aware that the skin of his face was radiant, since he had spoken with him. Aaron and all the Israelites saw that the skin of Moses' face was radiant, and they shrank from coming near him. But Moses called to them, and Aaron and all the chieftains in the assembly returned to him, and Moses spoke to them. Afterward, all the Israelites came near, and he instructed them concerning all that the Lord had imparted to him on Mount Sinai. And when Moses had finished speaking with them, he put a veil over his face. Whenever Moses went in before the Lord to speak with him, he would leave the veil off until he came out. And when he came out and told the Israelites what he had been commanded, the Israelites would see how radiant the skin of Moses' face was. Moses would then put the veil back over his face until he went in to speak with him.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. That's our entire Torah portion for the week. If you have a copy of the study sheet, I invite you to take it out at this point. And I've titled this week's study, An Awakening from Below. And so I'd like to explore this notion a little bit deeper. And this year, my study of the portion goes back to the very beginning verses that we read. And in the Hebrew, and chapter 30, verse 12, it says, Ki Tisa, this is how we get the name from this week's portion, Ki Tisa, Ki Tisa et Rosh B'nai Yisrael, which gets translated, at least in my edition here, as when you take a census of the Israelite people. Now, literally, what the Hebrew there is saying is, Ki when Tisa et Rosh, when you lift up, when you elevate the heads, B'nai Yisrael, of the children of Israel. So apparently this phrase of the lifting up of the head is a way to indicate that a counting of everyone is taking place. But I'm focusing on literally what the Hebrew is saying, which is the elevation to lift up the heads of the children of Israel. So I'd like to explore a little bit about what is this elevation of the heads that Moses is supposed to inspire or supposed to conduct. And to do that, I looked at the whole portion this year and came up with a kind of trajectory of what's happening, at least as I saw it this year in this week's Torah portion. So we begin with this instruction to elevate the faces of the Israelite people. That's immediately followed not by elevation, but by a collapse. This collapse that's represented by the incident of the making of the golden calf. As a result of the making of the golden calf, Moses, who has come down from the mountain, communing with God, sees this. He takes the two tablets that he has received up on top of Mount Sinai and shatters them. Following the shattering, Moses then seeks some kind of reconciliation, some kind of atonement on behalf of everyone with God. And that atonement then leads to a reconstruction of what was given at the top of Mount Sinai. We're going to explore a little bit about the nature of that reconstruction and how that was the same as, or perhaps different from, what was originally given to him at the top of Mount Sinai. And then our portion concludes, as June was reading about, this expression that Moses now, at the end of this portion, has a face that is now radiant, so radiant that at first it seems to frighten the people who back away from him. And then eventually they seem to draw near to him. And as a result of the radiance, Moses has a veil that he places over his face, so that it is not too radiant and frightening for the people. So that's the kind of trajectory I'd like to pursue. This sort of the instruction to elevate, the collapse of the Israelite people, the shattering of the memorialization of the covenant, namely the tablets that Moses has brought back, and then a reconstruction of that memorialization of the covenant. And when I looked at what was happening here with the golden calf, one verse struck out for me, and that is in chapter 32, verse 1, where the people say, "Come, make us a God who shall go before us." And I thought about this, and I thought about in terms of the spiritual, emotional, and ethical and social development that the Israelite people are to be going through as a result of having left behind the way of Egypt and heading towards the way of freedom and responsibility and accountability, which is what the Promised Land represents. So I focus on this notion that what they're asking for, in a sense, is they're asking Aaron to make a God who will lead them. What caught my attention in that reading is what they're now looking for is a way to back away from the very responsibility that they just committed themselves to at Mount Sinai, where they went through this ritual of hearing God's voice, of receiving a word, of instruction, of receiving a covenant. And that covenant is meant not just to be a new servant of a leader, as they had to serve Pharaoh. That covenant was all about how to craft a communal order that incorporates a higher level of responsibility and accountability than they had experienced in Egypt. So they're backing away from this new covenant, and they want to, in a sense, revert back to an older way, a way of creating something that they would merely bow down to and follow with a sense of unquestioned obedience. So when I thought of it that way, I thought, well, this is what's happening here. Moses sees this and he realizes how they have rejected that covenant that they had been called into at the foot of Mount Sinai, a covenant of a higher level of ethical and moral and spiritual responsibility and accountability than they had lived before. So he smashes the tablets as a way to erase that in a sense, a stunning way of reminding the people that of their failure and a need to, in a sense, redescribe, revitalize, and the covenant that they had entered into. Now, the tablets that he smashes, we learn in a couple of places, in both chapter 31 and chapter 32, it says the tablets were the work of God and the writing was God's writing. So we get this clear notion that the tablets are both designed by God and were inscribed by God. And then when we learn about the second set of tablets that Moses brings down, we see that there's a difference there. And that's in number 5 on the study sheet. Carve 2 tablets of stone like the first, and I will inscribe upon the tablets, says God. And then later it says, and he, Moses, wrote down on the tablets these words. So the second set of tablets is quite different in that they bear the inscription not of God, but they are the inscribed work of Moses. The human hand has now inscribed the second set of tablets as opposed to God's hand. So this is this level of human intervention, which creates a second set of tablets. That's a set of tablets that becomes the enduring set of tablets. That's the one that survives. That seems to be the one that is able to guide the people, as opposed to the first set of tablets, which was a set of tablets that was inscribed by the divine. That one shatters and is incapable of enduring in this dimension. So that leads to some lovely commentary about the role of human initiative and responsibility in bringing about a redemption. And so I'd like to turn to number 6 on the study sheet, which is a quote by Rav Kook, the great early 20th century Kabbalist and first chief rabbi of the pre-state of Israel. And he wrote this: the redemption of the Hebrew slaves from Egypt required supernatural intervention, a divine rescue from above, itaruta de Elia, an awakening from above. But the future redemption will take place within the laws of nature. It will emanate from the stirring of the human heart, itaruta de latata, an awakening from below. The Jewish people will rise from their exilic slumber, step by step, without overriding the laws of nature, so that even the beneficiary of the miracle is unaware of the great miracle that is unfolding. Then our future redemption will not be in haste, but will advance steadily like the ever-spreading light of daybreak. And if you turn over, I have another quote from Rav Kook on this. He says, unlike the dramatic exodus from Egypt, the future redemption is not an escape from the world. So this notion that Rav Kook here is pointing us towards, and that is hinted at in the text itself, is that this material world can serve not as an obstacle to redemption, but can be the very soil for redemption, can be the very generative of redemption. That is a very radical notion which did not prevail, not just in the ancient world, but didn't prevail in the modern world until even up to through the 19th century. Western culture in particular viewed the material world as a world that was debased and crass, profane, inferior, and incapable of being a source of the sacred. And with that, I'd like to turn to our painting that's on our study sheet. This is a painting by Renoir, Val de Moulin de Laguette. And it's one of the relatively early Impressionist paintings, painted, I believe, at about 1876. And one of the remarkable things about the Impressionist movement as a whole was they challenged what had been centuries and centuries and centuries of cultural and religious doctrine that indicated that this dimension of existence, this earthly dimension of existence, was inferior to something that was up above, that it was an impediment to a living a holy and sacred life, and had to be a dimension that needed to be transcended in order to experience beauty and purity and spirituality. The Impressionists as a movement, totally reject that. First of all, they embrace as their subject matter common everyday life and the natural world. And rather than trying to emphasize that which is ideal and eternal and everlasting, they painted in a manner that hinted at the ephemeral nature of reality, the transitory, the fleeting time of reality rather than its permanence. And so here in this painting by Renoir, he is painting working class people who have gathered at this dance hall in the Montmartre section of Paris. The Montmartre section of Paris in the 1870s was a place of working class and artistic habitation. It was the site of the Paris Commune in 1871. And here, rather than painting what the classical painters would want to paint, which is some grand historical setting or something out of Greek mythology or something out of some approved religious setting, Renoir here has painted just common everyday people who are engaged in dancing and socializing and drinking. And this is what the Impressionists elevated and saying, this is where beauty is to be found. And beauty is to be found in the moment, even in the and in that sense, they were acknowledging that the beauty can be found in everyday life. So the idea that redemption and redemptive truth could be located in the earthly dimension and in the mundane was a radical and revolutionary notion. And at the very beginning of their exhibitions, of their works, the Impressionists were criticized, ridiculed, they were excluded from the official exhibitions. But as we all know, eventually they triumphed because they spoke to modern life, which was the recognition that we have the capacity, not just those who are in positions of authority and in the hierarchy of the wealthy, the inherited people of inherited position, that everyday people have the capacity to bring beauty into this world and to be embedded, as Rav Kook has reminded us, to be embedded within nature itself. This notion about finding beauty and grace and a spiritual experience to be embedded within everyday life is one of the themes that Mary Oliver, a great poet, carried throughout much of her poetry. And this is her poem, Wild Geese. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting. over and over announcing your place in the family of things. That I'd love to know what you experienced in the course of reading our portion, looking at our painting, reflecting on the poem. Please go ahead, Anna.
What I experienced was the great urge not to do my honking geese imitation. I love Canadian geese. Do you know that the wing feathers of Canadian geese are really supple and fine, and they're really beautiful for writing Torah letters with? Like as the fat of the goose is a very refined fat, slicker than goose grease, Well, anyway, the feathers make good pens. And speaking, that's my comment of writing, the finger of God, writing the first set of commandments or words, Aser Tadibrot. And then you said, but Moses did the second ones. God did the first and Moses did the second. But it also says in Torah that God says, you come up again, carve the 2 stones, and I will write on them like the first. So when we teach children to write or ride bicycles or write or something, here, hold your pen in your hand. Okay. Often we will help the hand write. And I think that it's not that one or the other, God or Moses wrote. I think that God held Moses' hand to write those. Because in the Mem Sofit, which is one of the letters in one of the words in the 10 Commandments, is a shape that is closed. And if you carve that into or through a stone, you have a piece that's going to fall out. But in order to be the letter, it has to stay in. I think only God can make that miracle happen.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Lovely. That's lovely. Thank you so much. I love that. Yeah.
And it goes along with this. When you said the golden calf, the people say, make us a golden calf. We want to follow the calf, right? Yeah. We want something to follow. But you're talking about above and below. And it's not about being pushed or led or following. It's about uniting with God, of bringing the lower and the higher together. So that's what happens when God's hand guides Moses on it.
Lovely. That's lovely. Thank you.
We lift our heads up. We see God.
Thank you for reminding me about the lifting up, because what that does remind me is that's the way this portion starts, which is it starts to lift the heads up. And that seems to be, finally, the heads are lifted up when they finally understand that it's not about a subservient following, but that it is rising to a higher level of their own development. And so now their heads are lifted up. Let me call upon Kath and Mark and Catherine. Go ahead, Kath.
Thanks, Rabbi. I had 2 things. One is with the painting. And when I first looked at the painting, it looks very outside. It looks like it's an outside painting with all the trees around and the dappling kind of on the people, which to me looked like, trees above with the sunlight shining. But looking at the lights, some of the lights are posts in the ground, which is what I would expect from outside, but some of them are look like they're hanging from above. Mm-hmm. So it struck me that it's almost this juxtaposition of outside and inside at the same time.
Nice.
Which felt really interesting to me. Because it and also just everybody's faces are so sweet. I mean, there's this peacefulness on their faces. They're either listening or they're holding each other, or there's a little small smile, but they're just all these soft expressions on their faces, which also it gave me a great feeling of relaxation. Like these are people that are settled and comfortable and very happy with where they are.
Lovely.
So that was the thought with the painting. And I also was thinking, kind of caught the thing Anna was referring to, which was at 34:1, Yud He Vav He says, I will inscribe the tablets, the words that were on the first tablets, which you shattered, which in my head strongly implied that Yud He Vav He was going to do it on the second ones as well. But then later, as you pointed out, it says that Moses is supposed to do it.
Where?
So that was really interesting to me. They're different, but it seemed to me both of those are talking about the second set of tablets.
Nice.
But then and so there was that. And then the third thing was with the golden calf. I thought, and maybe this comes later because I didn't want to peek, but the fact that very clearly Aaron made the mold and had everybody put the gold in the mold, and he put the mold into the fire, out came the calf, and then he built a kind of a, area around it, a sacred area around it. But then when Moses calls him on it and says, hey, what happened? Why did you do this? He goes, I don't know. I mean, I kind of collected this gold and I just sort of randomly threw it into the fire, and look, magic, here comes this calf. I mean, in my view, he totally backed away from any responsibility for what happened. Which that almost bothered me more than anything else in this whole parsha. Was just like, so there may be something later where, he gets called out on that, but that really struck me, that duplicity of, not being brave and owning your action. I just really struck me. So.
Thank you, Kat. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much. Let me call upon Mark, and then Catherine, and then Norman. Go ahead and unmute, Mark.
First of all, I want to thank Anna for her interpretation, because I was confused reading 34:1 as well. And I think you added a lot of depth to that meaning for me, Anna, because, in Hebrew it says, katavti, I wrote, referring to God. Moses is carving the tablets, but according to this, God is actually writing or inscribing still. And the Hebrew word is katavti. But I really love the idea that God was guiding Moses's hand. And as I recall, if you are writing a word in the Torah, you're always guided by.
Yeah.
He's muted.
Yeah, you got a little frozen there, and so we're all
I want to know what
About
you're
when-
suspense. Yeah.
When I heard Anna make that explanation, it's a cooperative venture. And really that's what this transformation is about. It's a cooperative venture between God, and eventually the people will figure it out. So anyway, I just wanted to make that comment. Thank Anna.
Nice to honor what she said, and to kind of expand upon it, that this is now to be one's holy work is being guided, and a sense of partnership and collaboration. Nice. That's very nice. Thank you. And Catherine, please share with us.
Yes. I was struck this time reading through the Parshat of the sequence from the molten calf, which in fact is an animal of sacrifice, which is confused with the holy, so to speak. And then right before Adonai tells Moses to carve the tablets the second time, he talks about how he can't be contemplated. His face can't be contemplated. And so calling it into the fact that there must be something intangible in the sacred. There must be something intangible in Adonai that keeps us seeking. So that was what struck me this time.
Catherine. Okay, Catherine. Okay, this is great, because you have now taken us back to the Impressionists, because the Impressionists were all focused on the sense of fleetingness of time.
Yes.
And they tried to incorporate that sense of motion and the intangible into their painting. And so this notion of Moses wanting to seek, let me just stop still for a moment, God, and let me look at you.
Let me capture you.
Yeah, let me freeze you. And God say, that's not the way it works. What you can see is my motion. You can see my passing presence. And so I love that you've tied that back into what the Impressionists were trying to do as well, in terms of their overthrowing of classical art, which says we can capture what is beauty, we can capture the ideal, we can freeze it in time, we can idolize it, if you will. And the Impressionists just blow that to pieces. So thank you for that. You want to say some more, Catherine? Yeah.
No, that was basically it.
Okay, thank you. Steve, I'll call upon Norman in a second, but Steve has got his French book of art here open across from me. So yeah,
Yeah, this description said these are not ordinary people. They're the models that are usually used, as well as friends.
Yes.
So this is not your off the street French.
Well, they are some of the people that are in this painting, yes, are
Right.
people
In
that
fact, I think one of them is.
yeah, people that he knew, people that he's as models, but he's incorporating them in a scene that's meant to describe where ordinary people would gather. But thank you for pointing that. So yes, go ahead.
And the scene of these people is very sweet, like Kath said. They're gentle with each other. It's a moment of gentle intimacy among people,
Nice.
which you chose.
Nice, thank you. Okay, Norman, please share with us.
So, Rabbi, this is the most recent of the artistic depictions that you've shared with us along the themes of breaking the rules. And as I'm thinking about the Parsha, everything here is about breaking rules. But it's also in the breaking of the rules that new value is created. Moses disappears. He's not supposed to do that. God disappears. God's not supposed to do that. Look what happened. There's also a progression here where the people have done something wrong, and then afterwards they get the 10 Commandments, which tells them not to do what they did wrong. It's putting the cart before the horse, so to speak, theologically. God threatens to violate his covenant of his covenant of being with the people by threatening to kill them, and Moses calls him on that. That's leadership development. It's value that comes through that violation. Of course, there's a violation of Aaron making the calf, making me wonder what sort of leader Aaron is, and also it causes an aspersion, I think, on the priesthood after that. Also, Moses shatters a tablet. He's kind of a hero for doing that. But in modern Orthodox usage, if you drop the Torah, it's a major, major violation, let alone shattering anything, let alone shattering the word and the hand of God. But Moses is praised for that. So it's just a series of breaking the rules, but somehow it works in the Parsha.
Norman, this is a great theme that you brought up. It's really lovely. Hadn't thought about it in that particular framework and that progression. And you did get me to think about the dropping of a Torah, the dropping of the tablets. When I was a congregational rabbi, I did drop the Torah, and there is a halakhic remedy for a ritual for healing that moment, which is to fast. And what we did at the congregation was people volunteered to share in that 40 days of fasting, which is a way of bringing that community even closer together rather than just leaving it on the shoulders of one person to atone for that moment. because it's a moment that's traumatic for everyone, not just for the person who dropped it. And the notion about the shattering of the tablets, because the Torah is a scroll. It takes you around and around and around. It's never over. Whereas a tablet has this framework to it, this finiteness to it that a scroll really doesn't. And the concluding bit of commentary that the great medieval commentator Rashi has in the 5 books of Moses is when Moses recounts the smashing of the tablets, and Rashi's final comment in the book of Deuteronomy is he imagines God saying, Yashakoach, good for you, more power to you for having smashed those tablets. Because what the smashing of the tablets represents is the opening up of the possibilities for interpretation and wordplay, rather than the literal etching in stone of those words. So thank you for kind of opening up that conversation as well. Thank you. Thank you, Norm. Let me call upon Wendy.
I was going to say what Bob said. Bob, it's almost like you took the words out of my mouth. I was thinking about breaking rules and new values coming out of breaking those rules and possibilities that come out of that. We often do things too that we don't understand as well when we're developing and growing as individuals, as a community, as nation. And I began to think about that with Aaron as well. You know, did he really fully grasp what he was doing? I don't know. But as we evolve, we make mistakes. Then we look back, we learn from them, we gain from them, we lose from them. And I saw this a lot about breaking rules. Change is so hard. Change is so difficult that we fall back sometimes to what we know. We move forward to what we don't know and then test it and figure out as we test and change. And I just kept seeing these breaking of rules as a new way of learning, a new way of evolving, a new way of discovering, a new way of coming into being having a place, announcing your being, announcing yourself, and discovering yourself.
Wendy and Norman both, thank you so much for bringing up that whole notion. And those of us who have been parents know that there's this fine tension between wanting your children to
Yes.
obey the rules and then also wanting them to break the rules so that they can
Yes.
grow up and
Yes.
become their own
Yes.
person. And
And
it's a very fraught
it,
relationship.
it's so funny you said that,
And real-
because the whole time we were reading this, I kept thinking of children
Yeah, yeah.
and breaking rules and learning from it, and having to cope with, as a parent, children breaking those rules and not wanting to control, but also to allow when those rules are broken, for not to necessarily punish, but for a child to be able to learn, especially from their own being, as to what breaking that rule will mean for them in the present and in the future. It's so funny you would say that, because I kept thinking about children the whole time we read this tonight.
Thank you. Oh, beautiful. Great. All right, let me thank you both so much. Let me call upon David and Susan and then Richard here. Go ahead.
So, kind of along the same topic, when I hear the story of them wanting the golden calf, it's like going back to something that they're comfortable with. And sometimes you have to go back in order to let go, so that, you know, kind of like a kid with his blanket that he just can't let go. There has to be a process whereby he can let go of it. And I kind of felt like that's what this whole story was their ability to helping them to let go.
You know, Susan, thank you for bringing all that up, because what you've done is kind of taken us to like the 30,000-foot level of looking at Torah, which is really what it's addressing is, how does one change? How does one evolve from a place of constraint to a place of liberation. How does one develop as a human being? And there are some cultures and perhaps even some faith traditions that say the way a person develops is you tell them how they have to develop. You tell them what they have to know. You insist that they behave a certain way and believe certain things. And this tradition is so fraught with this kind of pushback and provocation and challenge. And there's this tension between tradition and innovation in Judaism. So you've kind of captured that in your comments. So thank you so much. Let me call upon Richard
Did David
here.
want to say something? You said Susan and David. Did David have his hand up too?
Thank you. I think,
No?
yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead, Richard. Thank you.
Oh, just briefly, this business of elevation, I've always seen that as, all right, everybody, chins up. We've been a long ways and done a lot of stuff here and toward freedom, but the work is just beginning. So keep your chin up. And the other piece is I can see that, we just got out of slavery, we wanted our freedom, and now you're giving us all these rules. And business of learning how to deal with rules. I was struck again by, it was about grinding up the incense and putting a little in your own pocket and taking it home. That'll cut you off from your people. And I wonder what the message is there and why. And I thought, well, it's not about taking something. It's about the intention, the evil intention, or the whatever it is, the breaking of the rule and the attitude that makes you do that. That is what's taking you out of your people. You're not threatening with death on this one. You're just saying you can't be the person. You revealed something about yourself, and I'm telling you, you have made yourself no longer a part of this people.
Wow, thank you. Such wonderful comments. I'm going to just try and tie it back together by looking at our painting, by recalling what Rav Kook said, and then also what Mary Oliver has so beautifully and lyrically written in her poem. The message of all of that seems to be that the origin of redemption lies not in an intervention from outside earthly life, but is from a stirring that occurs within earthly life. You do not have to walk on your knees. You can embrace one's bodily existence and find there something that is uplifting and spiritual. And Rav Kook reminding us that redemption will come not from outside and from an intervention into the natural world, but will come as a blossoming from within the earthly world. And that is what the Impressionists have provided us as well. That beauty and truth is found not in something that is idealized and frozen in time, and that most of us will never be able to access, but is something to be found in something that we access every day in our human community, in our joys, and in our attention to everyday life. I want to thank each and every one of you for being so attentive to daily life, for bringing that sense of joy, of what it means to be alive and to be embarked upon this journey of stirring this awakening from below. Thank you all so much. God bless you all. I look forward to our next gathering. Be well.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Good night, everybody.
Night.